Most cherry shrimp care guides give you a list. Parameters, tank size, maintenance, done. When something goes wrong in your tank, a list can't tell you why that's happening. Without understanding that why, you're basically going to be guessing at a solution and leaving your tank in danger for longer. Here's what we found. The people who have success keeping cherry shrimp have not memorized the most information. Instead, they're the ones that actually understand what's going on in their tank. Once you get that, you stop having to white knuckle every water change. You stop panicking every time a shrimp sheds its shell. You start making better decisions faster because you actually know what you're looking for. That's what this video is trying to be. Not just another care guide for shrimp, but a crash course that explains what most guides skip, how your parameters interact with each other, why certain ones may be off at certain times, and what healthy shrimp behavior actually looks like so you understand the difference. To be clear, you don't need a biology degree for any of this, but we do think the science is genuinely very interesting, and once you see it and understand it, keeping shrimp stops feeling like guesswork. We are going to be covering the basics of what we think is important, and we're going to be releasing this in sections. After each video part, we are going to have a live stream where we discuss each section in even more detail and give you an opportunity to ask questions and learn more and interact with the community. Let's get into it now. Adam, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Wonderful. Well, my name's Adam, and I've been keeping shrimp and fish, specifically guppies and Neocaridinias, for over a decade now. I did a bunch of importing back when I was in high school and going through college. I'm a systems engineer. I like to look through the lens of standardization, so I'm setting up a automated system to help me breed fish and shrimp. I think it's going to be the best way to keep parameters auditable and correct, but yeah, I think that's a good loose background of myself.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Adam. For those of you who don't know, my name is Rick and I run Shrimply Explained. I studied biology in my undergrad degree and since then have been applying that to reading research papers for this hobby here, and it's been a lot of fun. I also wrote the only fact-based book on shrimp keeping with over 150 citations and 300 pages covering everything you could possibly want to know about the actual science behind it. Now, let's go ahead and talk about what we'll be covering in the rest of this video. We'll start with understanding what are cherry shrimp in general, some of the really interesting facts about them, why people keep them, because they are really cool animals. After that, we'll be going into tank setup and covering water parameters. Following that, we'll do tank cycling, maturing, along with maintenance, and then shrimp diet, breeding, and a number of common issues that people run into when they're just starting out and how to handle those. Let's go ahead and start off with what are cherry shrimp. They're technically two different species in the hobby. One is Neocaridina davidi, and the other is Neocaridina palmata. They can both breed together, and they're both originally found in freshwater streams in East Asia. We like to keep these shrimp for a huge variety of reasons. For one, they're really unique animals. I mean, the fact that they shed their shell every month or so, the way that they pop out as they do it is really fun. It's a cool thing to always be looking for in your tank. It's also a lot of fun to watch them swarm food, and it's really cool to see them get into a breeding frenzy, because the females will release pheromones when they're ready to breed, and that causes the males to start going crazy in the tank, and it makes the tank really active and interesting to watch. They're always doing something. They're always busy little creatures that are scrounging around in the tank looking for food and trying to help clean up the ecosystem. Aside from that, they can live and breed in a wide variety of parameters because they are very hardy. They're also colorful. You can get just about any color under the sun that you want except for purple, and they can really complement a wide variety of different aquascapes and just add that little extra pop of vibrancy that you might be looking for in a tank. Lastly, they are really easy to breed once you have everything set up properly, because they are very hardy, and it's a lot of fun to watch them carry eggs and then have those hatch and see the population explode. That's what we're trying to get to in this video series. We're trying to get to that point where you can start seeing that population of yours grow and see how rewarding this hobby can really be. Let's go ahead and let Adam talk about tank size and setup here.
Tank size is kind of one of the first questions that people get into right before we even start looking at the shrimp. So this picture here on the right, this is in my old bedroom. There's a 125-gallon tank on top with a series of 10 gallons beneath it. There's sort of no upper bound, right? Nature has big volumes of water that have shrimp in them, but there is sort of a minimum bound on this. We generally want to keep people above the 5-gallon realm. It's totally possible to keep shrimp in smaller gallons, but the problem is going to be keeping the parameters stable, especially if you're a beginner. I would treat a 5-gallon as a true minimum. You're going to be fighting parameter swings, and you're going to be fighting kind of yourself over time by keeping such a small tank, I guess. For me personally, 10 gallons is an absolute weapon of choice.
The more space you have, the more space that leaves for them to breed and reproduce before they start hitting a population limit. So that's where it's often worth spending a little bit more to get a slightly larger tank and enjoy the hobby a little bit more.
So after you pick something of correct size, it's important to understand that there's kind of a spectrum of needs versus wants. To start off with, the stable environment is an absolute must. So your parameters need to stay flat, and those must just stay steady forever. The next would be predators. It's very, very difficult to keep shrimp in a tank where they're actively being hunted. Additionally, live plants is, in my eyes, a must. I would tell every new person to get some live plants. The type of live plant is really up to you, but there's lots of good literature on live plants being sort of the most diverse habitat for the bacteria and the microorganisms that they're going to be eating. Additionally, filtration, specifically biological, is a must. There's an argument to be made that mechanical is necessary, but truthfully, I do think biological filtration at a minimum really is necessary. From there, habitat structures, keeping substrate, hard rock, these can be up to you a little bit, right? I've kept shrimp in bare bottom tanks, and I've had them breeding and had hundreds of them. That's not really a recommendation, but it's totally possible. We would recommend you to keep them on substrate. It adds a lot of surface area. Substrate's super beneficial, but it is more of a want. For rocks and wood, it's completely up to you. The wood is up to your aesthetic, whether you like looking at it or not. And finally is like super aesthetic things. High fertilizer, high power lights, CO2, specialty glass, not needed at all.
Awesome, thanks for that, Adam. Moving on here into water parameters. Basically, there are a lot of different things in our tank, some of which we can sense and some of which we can't. Now, safe water, safe for us to drink, does not mean safe for our shrimp. For example, some homes, especially older ones, may have copper pipes, which is perfectly fine for us to be drinking as long as it doesn't get to too high levels, but shrimp can only handle these tiniest amount of copper. So you may add your shrimp and they're dead the next day, and that sucks to have happen, and we want to help you avoid that. With that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about some of the basics of our water parameters here. Temperature. So we're looking for roughly 65 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit here, but that number's pretty flexible, especially on the lower end. There are people that are keeping their cherry shrimp outside in near freezing temperatures. The cherry shrimp don't breed very much, but they can absolutely survive in those conditions. Once you get to a higher point though, that can be a little bit more detrimental because that increases how fast bacteria grow in your system and also increases how quickly something can go wrong. Once you start hitting like 82 degrees Fahrenheit roughly, anything above that, you can potentially start to see more bacterial infections. You also may see shrimp start to lose their eggs and may not be able to breed successfully. So that higher temperature is much more stressful on them than the lower temperatures. Part of the reason temperature is so important is because it basically controls how fast their body works and functions. At higher temperatures, shrimp are going to grow faster and they're going to breed more. For example, at about 78 degrees, their eggs will hatch in roughly 15 to 16 days, whereas at 65 degrees, those eggs are going to hatch at about 30 days or more. On the other hand, those lower temperatures mean that your shrimp are going to live quite a bit longer because their metabolism is not as fast. It's just really interesting to know how these aquatic organisms are affected by their temperature so much more than we are as mammals. Our body temperature stays the same, and so we have a fairly standardized growth rate over time. There are some really cool facts and differences between our biology and a shrimp that I think are fun to think about and consider in how they affect their lifespan. Adam, did you have anything you wanted to add about temperature here?
Yeah, I do really quick. The important thing to note is that unlike humans, where if you put me in that freezing water, I would burn a ton of energy trying to keep my internal temperature correct. They do not have that energy requirement. They will just match the outside. So their metabolism drops through the floor, and so does their energy requirement. So if you're trying to keep shrimp in a much lower temperature, not add any food to that tank, you're going to foul your water, and nothing is going to consume that energy.
Yeah, great point. Again, understanding how parameters affect the way you want to approach your tank setup, your feeding, is really helpful so that you know what your goals are. Moving on from there is your pH here. Most people have probably been introduced to it in school. It essentially measures how acidic or basic the water is on a 0 to 14 scale. Anything above 7 is considered basic, 7 is neutral, and then anything below 7 is considered acidic. All aquatic animals function best at a specific pH, and when they get too far out of that range, they start to experience stress and then eventually death. For Neocaridina, that pH is roughly 6.5 to 8 pH. I've heard of people keeping Neocaridina as low as like 6.3. There have even been some at 6.0, but just understand that that lower range can be really stressful for them. And then going up to 8.2 is about the cutoff. The exact cutoffs are somewhat flexible. Moving on to KH, or our carbonate hardness. This is measured in degrees hardness or parts per million ppm. And so in degrees hardness, we're looking for 3 to 8 DKH. We're looking for that range because KH is what helps to stabilize pH. And again, we're looking for stability in our tank. If we have a KH that's too low, then that's likely to lead to more pH swings throughout the day and potentially a pH crash in the worst case scenario that could wipe out your colony. Likewise, the problem with the higher KH is that for every KH you have, you can expect an increase in pH. The exact relationship is a little bit difficult, but depending on the different water chemistries. But often if you're getting 8 DKH or above, then you're typically seeing a higher pH than you would want in the tank. Now, that's not always true, and so shrimp can sometimes be kept in 10, 12 degrees hardness water without an issue. One really cool thing is that this KH control over pH is called buffering. And that buffering system here that uses carbonate is the exact same one that our bodies use in our blood to maintain a stable pH. And so if we were to have a too low of a KH in our blood, then we would actually potentially have some very serious health conditions. Everything that we see in our tank is connected to our bodies in some way, which again, I find fascinating. What's a little bit different about our tank is that it can deplete over time. And so we need to just be aware of that. The more we feed, the more likely KH is to decrease because it's actually used up as bacteria eat through the food and decompose it. The more you feed, the more likely you are to need to do water changes and the like to maintain that KH. And from there, GH, or general hardness, is another one that if you're coming in from just the standard aquarium hobby, you may not be that familiar with. GH is really important for shrimp because it measures the amount of minerals in the water, and shrimp build their shells from these minerals. They are actively absorbing minerals from the water so that they can harden their shells after each molt and protect themselves. GH, just like KH, is measured in either degrees hardness or ppm, and you're looking for about 6 to 10 DGH in your tank. That's actually a very flexible number. I've kept shrimp as low as 2 DGH all the way up to about 30. I'm not going to say that they were breeding as much as they would in the ranges that we're recommending, but they can survive as long as the minerals are in the right ratios. So yeah, just know that you need the right ratios to molt, although there are some points where you can still have some molting issues even when GH is in the right range, and we'll cover that a little bit later on. Moving on to ammonia, nitrite, nitrate. These are all compounds that are toxic to shrimp and that are released from decomposing food, from animal waste, from plant decomposition. Ammonia and nitrite are very toxic, so must be kept at 0 ppm, whereas nitrate is a little bit less toxic. Typically, we want to aim for 20 ppm or below. Lastly, I wanted to talk about total dissolved solids, or TDS. It's basically a measure of how pure your water is. If your GH and KH and ammonia, nitrite, nitrate all add up to basically what you're reading with your TDS meter, then that generally means that you have fairly pure water. But there can be a large unknown there, and understanding that can just be useful for understanding when your TDS is a danger. We generally recommend about 200 to 300 ppm TDS. That's roughly where healthy, clean water with the right GH and KH would get you. In general, if you do have a TDS meter, looking for a lower TDS value, again, somewhere in the 200 to 300 ppm range, is great. But there are instances where people have perfectly healthy tap water that can get up to 400, 500 plus ppm, because again, Neocaridina are very adaptable. If you want an estimate of your tap water values without having to go and buy a meter, which are roughly like $13, then you can go ahead and just look up your local tap water quality report. And that can also give you some information on the ranges that you'd expect for their other parameters here as well. Adam, do you want to add anything else to this section?
I think the $13 meter is an absolute must compared to all the other expenses. It is the fastest test that you're going to do. So you'll use all your test kits under setup. But, over time, once a month or more, dunk in your TDS pen and see what it's looking like to make sure that you're monitoring it. TDS is a pretty good method to monitor the situation. It may not be the best to understand exactly what's going on at setup, but if there's something that's causing your TDS to go up over time, that is something to pay attention to, and it may even lead to you wanting to do additional maintenance, like a water change or something, to try to correct the TDS building up over time.
As far as water testing equipment goes, we have the option between test strips, liquid test kits, and electronic meters. So some of the pros for your test strips. These are incredibly easy to use. So you just dunk it in, you put it down flat, wait a minute, and then you have all of your readings for the parameters that we discussed. And so that can be very, very convenient. But they're not very precise. You might see that a slightly darker purple to slightly lighter purple square ends up being like 100 ppm difference in general hardness, and that's not that useful. In addition, test strips have the earliest expiration date. Once you open that container, they have a very set time when you can use them. The gold standard, what we recommend, are your liquid test kits, like API, Freshwater Master Test Kit, plus the GH and KH liquid test kit. These are also color-based, but they are generally easier to interpret. They are more precise. They also last a lot longer than test strips. My test kits, I bought them 4 or 5 years ago, and they don't expire until 2028. On the downside, you'll often be looking at $40 to $50 for a full test kit, including your GH and KH, because the freshwater test kits don't include those. So they are going to be more expensive than your $10, $15 test strips. The other problem with them is that they are slower, so they can take 5 minutes to develop. One thing to also add is that your test strips are going to typically be measuring in ppm, whereas the liquid test kits are where you'll find the degrees hardness, your DGH, DKH. Lastly, we have electronic meters. You turn them on, you put them in your water, you have readings in seconds. They're very fast and they're very easy to interpret. On the other hand, it can be a little expensive. Like a good pH meter would run you up to $100 or more. TDS meters, on the other hand, are generally pretty reliable and consistent, even on the lower end, although they do need to be calibrated to make sure that that number you're getting is consistent. The next thing we want to talk about here are the types of water available. When you're keeping fish or when you're just getting in the hobby, you may be like, oh, let's just use tap water. I can totally get that. What you may not realize is that there are actually 2 different options for the type of water you're using in your tank. The first is your tap water. It's very accessible, it's very cheap, and those are huge benefits and pros of using it. The problem is that the health of your tap water varies a ton. So tap water is affected by the specific geology of your area. It can be affected by pollutants, changes in the water treatment process, weather. And so all of these can lead to inconsistencies. It can just be a pain to deal with. It can also sometimes be dangerous. So if your geology is one that doesn't provide the right minerals in the water, your shrimp may have trouble molting even when your GH is in the right range, and that can be really frustrating. We have a bunch of resources talking about how to understand that and how to fix that on shrimplyexplained.com, and we'll link those in the description below. When we are thinking about maintaining a really stable tank and considering doing regular water changes, especially if you're feeding a lot, then that inconsistency between seasons, between a bunch of other factors, becomes a really serious issue that you have to be aware of. You have to make sure you're testing your water consistently before every water change, and it just adds up to an extra hassle over time. Likewise, because there can be differences in tap water from one time to another, adding it slowly is generally recommended, and this is why people often have deaths when they are doing like larger water changes with tap water, because their tap water has changed from one point to the next. So if you're using tap water, make sure you're adding it slowly. Adam, anything you want to add right now?
Yeah, I want to throw out there that tap water has a lot of variables. I'm in Arizona, and so we have, we live in a desert, but more than that, we have kind of a monsoon season some years when we're lucky. And just that large volume of rainwater can change our parameters at the tap wildly, like in an extreme way. It can double the TDS, right? And so within a 4-month period, I've seen our water come out of the tap under 500 TDS, which is incredible for us. And I've seen it 5 months later go over 1200 TDS, which is ridiculous for drinking water, to be honest. Even the good part of the year, it's not really in the realm of possible for my shrimp or guppies. And so realistically, just take out the variables. It will make your life a lot easier. If people around you are doing remineralizer, or there's not big shrimp communities around you, that should tell you that there's some level of barrier to entry. For me, that was certainly the case.
So we've talked a lot about now the couple of pros and the many cons of tap water, but what's the other option here? Adam alluded to it. The other option is using remineralized water. What this is basically purified water that has been stripped of everything. There's not going to be any GH, KH, there aren't going to be any pollutants and any other issues. It's a very, very clean, controlled start every single time. And so it's very, very safe for your tank at any time of year, no matter what. When we have this water, as we mentioned, it doesn't have any GH and KH, so you have to add that back in with a remineralizer that typically costs around 15 to 20 bucks, but covers you for several hundred gallons of water and often several years if you're only keeping a tank or two. It's more expensive, but it is very, very safe and consistent. And when you have that level of consistency, if something does go wrong in your tank, then you know that it cannot be your water. It is something else going on in your setup, and so that immediately eliminates variables and makes it so much easier to find the actual culprit of your issues and solve your problem. If you don't want to pay up front purchasing an RODI system, then what you can do is buy purified water from your store. Just make sure that you test it with a TDS meter to verify that it is low enough TDS. Adam, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, so
So that's it for this video. There's a lot more interesting information about water parameters, about tap water, remineralized water, and we're going to be discussing that in our live stream. If you do want to say hi, ask questions, get a little bit more information, then be sure to tune into that live stream at the time on the screen. We'll look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for watching for now. Be sure to like and subscribe, and happy shrimping.